Hello and welcome to Legalese. I'm Ernest Hyde, your host. Legalese is brought to you by the Northern Middlesex Bar Association on a monthly basis. And in the past few months, we've been talking about estate planning considerations. And we probably should have started with the basis of all of your estate planning, which is financial planning. But better late than never. And I have with me today Marshall Tisdale from Edward Jones in Westford. Marshall is my financial planner, and I bribed him and threatened him to get him onto the show. Actually, he's a pro because he's done his own show in the past for the Rotary Club and in Westford. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ernie. Great to see you again.
So let's start with what's the basis of financial planning for individuals that you do?
Sure, yeah. I mean, as a financial planner, I work with individuals, families, and small business owners as well. And I guess you would say the basics of financial planning is understanding as a client where you are today, really identifying what your goals are and needs are, and working with somebody like myself or doing it on your own to put together strategies to help you to reach those long-term goals. And so, in a nutshell, that's what financial planning is, and that's where I spend most of my time.
Okay. And what type of, you just happen to say the magic word, do it on your own, which I hope scares a lot of people, only because I've seen disasters. But what sort of experience or education background does a financial planner typically have to qualify to be a financial planner?
Well, like a lot of industries, financial advisors can come from all different backgrounds and walks of life. But with Edward Jones, we all have to have a certain amount of education and training, and a lot of that comes from Edward Jones. Me personally, I went to Bentley University, was Bentley College, so I had a background in business already, but I certainly wasn't a financial advisor when I came out of college.
Right.
So what Edward Jones is really good at is helping to make sure that we have all the right certifications and licenses to actually call ourselves a financial advisor. In fact, some of those things are the Series 7 exam, as well as other designations like AAMS or CFP. All of those are continuing education modules or classes that we take over time to make sure that we know what we're talking about. But really, a lot of it comes from experience.
Right.
And I've been doing this for 10 years. I started the office here in Westford 10 years ago. Almost, in October, I guess, was my anniversary. So we're working on our 11th year, and we're just having a lot of fun. And, it's really about making sure that you've got a right connection between you and your advisor, because everybody's a human being. They all have different personalities and different ways of working with their clients. So it's important that clients not only find somebody with the education that we just spoke about, but also with the right temperament that meets their needs and the right personality to help make a fruitful, cooperation.
Okay, so there are certain things that when you go in to visit a financial planner to begin with, you probably want to know about the planner from a client's point of view. What are some of those things? Like, what are your qualifications? Pretty much what I just asked you, and what services do you provide, and how do I pay you? And is it kind of that?
All excellent questions, and those are some of the things that if I was a client myself, I would want to be asking right off the bat as well. What's your background? What's your education? Tell me a bit about the company, because every company is different too.
Exactly.
And we could have a whole show just on the industry, but Edward Jones does have a unique niche in that industry because, we open up very small offices of one financial advisor in each town that we work in, and we do that on purpose. So we're a very large I don't want to say company because we're not a corporation. We are a partnership. So, but we're not a franchise either. What we are a grouping of almost 13,000 financial advisors, and we have offices all throughout the U.S. and Canada. So we're a very large company with a lot of support, but we feel and act like a mom and pop shop in your town because I opened up my office 10 years ago in Westford, and it's just myself and my full-time assistant, Diana. And so really when somebody calls, they're just going to get myself or my assistant, and we're going to know who they are. We're going to know their voice on the phone. We're going to know about you and your family. So the difference between that and some other firms are there's the independent channel where somebody might be working out of their home, or they might be sharing offices with other people, and that's fine too. There's also another model that a lot of companies work with where you might go to a regional location like Burlington or somewhere where there's multiple financial advisors, and you might speak with one financial advisor one day and a different one on another time. So how do you as a client want to work with your advisors? I think one of the first questions I would be asking as a client. And then, of course, how do you charge for your services? How do you, proactively contact your clients? What's your process for reviewing investments? All of these things are very important. So those are some of the questions I would be asking.
And there are various ways of charging. Can you give us some examples as to how different companies charge? I know you pretty much are aware of what goes on in the industry,
Sure.
and they're all over the lot.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, the industry is a big enough industry where you've got a lot of different models, and they all kind of charge, they can charge their own way. But the industry really has standardized the pricing for the services that we provide. And there's also, of course, the whole no-load discussion as well, which is not getting any service, you're just providing, or you're buying investments.
So like a broker.
Like a broker. Fidelity is a great example of that. Vanguard, T. Rowe Price, they have excellent investments. And the quick phrase I use is no load equals no service. And that's not a disparaging remark, it's just the truth.
It's a fact. Yeah.
If you're not paying anything for the products or anything like that, you're really not getting any service with them either. So from a cost perspective, there are a couple of different options. When you're working with a full-time financial advisor like myself, we wear 3 different hats, I like to call it. One is the brokerage hat, which is the relationship that we may have with the client, where we provide products and advice on those products, and they pay per product. That could be individual stocks, it could be mutual funds, what have you. Another approach is a fee-based model, and that's also called a managed account approach, where you don't you don't pay for products when you buy them or sell them. You pay for the service you're getting on them, and so that is usually a fee per year, and that can change depending on how much you have invested and the type of plan that we're looking at.
Right.
The third hat is an insurance hat that I wear. So licensed in the insurance industry as well, we have the ability to solve people's problems using life insurance in certain circumstances where appropriate, and they have a slightly different cost structure in them as well. So each 3 of those hats are 3 ways of working with a financial advisor, at least at Everett Jones, and sometimes it's a combination of all 3 of those, and sometimes it's one only or the other one. But what's nice is we give the client options and we help advise them as to which options may be most appropriate for them and explain fully exactly how we get paid through all of that. The other big thing is that we don't get paid by the hour. So that's one big difference between us and some professionals. We basically get paid through the investments that you're making in one of those 3 buckets. But we don't charge for our time per se.
Right. Okay. So if I'm about to go into a financial planner to discuss financial planning the first time, what should I be bringing with me? What sort of information is important for you in order to help me?
Yeah, well, my process I've honed it over 10 years, and it's really kind of a 2-appointment process where we get to know somebody the first appointment. So I don't ask for anybody to bring anything on the first appointment. If they would like to, they can. But what I'd really like to do is just learn about them. What are they really trying to do? What are some of their short-term and long-term goals? We talk a little bit about their general assets, maybe some general liabilities, to get an idea of what they're trying to accomplish. And most importantly for me, I want to ask them, why are they sitting in that seat? What are they looking for that they're not currently getting? And what type of relationship do they want from their advisor, so that we can be on the same page? And then, of course, in that meeting, I'll explain how I work. And then by the second appointment, I'm really, if they've given me all their statements, then the second appointment, I show them what they have, what I think they should have, if anything different, why, and then what it would cost to have me manage their assets moving forward. So all of that's explained on the second appointment, and then they can choose whether to work with me or not. And it's not an all or nothing deal either. There are certain pieces of somebody's life financially that they might want me to work on, and some others they might want to do on their own or what have you.
Okay, so one of the myths of many people when they start talking about financial planning is, I don't have enough money to have a financial planner. What? Kind of give us a gist of where you see that number lying, if there is a number.
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
not
and that
even
is
sure.
a really good point, because a lot of people do have that misconception that I don't have enough money to work with a financial advisor. But that's certainly not the case at Edward Jones by any stretch. And every advisor is different too. So you might hear a different answer from somebody else,
Sure,
which is fine.
of course.
Because it's almost like I'm a financial doctor. Sometimes you call up a doctor to become a new patient and they say they're not taking clients, so they're not taking new patients. I can understand that. Not quite at that point myself, but what I want to do is just make sure that people know that if they have any money that they care about for long-term goals and they want help in dealing with it, I'm able to help them. It may not be the case with other people. Maybe somebody else has a minimum amount that they want to work with. Not so with most of Edward Jones that I know of, and certainly not so in my practice. I'll work with anybody as long as they have a willingness to, take advice, that we like each other, we get along, and then that they've got long-term goals they want to plan for.
Okay. And so, regardless of what the amount is, at some point in time, if the relationship seems to work, you take either what they already have invested if they have investments, or you take whatever funds they have to invest and invest it
Right.
for them, right? What do you say to someone who says, no, that's all stock market stuff. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm going to leave it in the bank,
Right.
and I know it's safe in the bank.
Yeah, and that can be a challenge. And because a lot of people feel that way, especially since we just went through 2008. Now, of course, it's been many years on, and we've done tremendously well in the stock market and rebounded in the economy to a large degree. But people still have the hangover. People still have a hard time thinking that things are rosy after such a bad 2008, 2009. So there is that issue. What I always tell people, or get them to think about, is, okay, you have some amount of money, and you want that money to do something for you in the future. And think about this for a second, how much you are earning on that money. And if it's in cash, like you said in your scenario, they're probably not earning much. And unfortunately, interest rates are not jumping through the roof anytime soon, so people are just not going to get too much on their money in the banks. Now, if they need it for emergency funds, fine, that's where it should be. But if it's long-term money, the impact of inflation can be devastating, because you may want to retire at some point, but inflation never retires. So the cost of everything going up in value, eggs, gas, bread, goes up by on average 3% each year. If your cash is sitting at the bank at maybe 1%, you're still losing 2% in that scenario to buying power. And so that's an issue. So we have to make sure that people understand what's impacting their long-term strategy if they're just sitting on the sidelines. And if they're reticent to go full force into the stock market, I don't blame them. The stock markets are not without risk. So you've got to make sure that you're well balanced in your portfolios, making sure that you have prudence and protection where you can add protection. And so those are the conversations that we have with our clients to help them, get off the bench, so to speak, and into the markets a little bit with some balance, depending on their own time horizon and their own risk tolerance, profile.
Would you recommend someone at the age of, say, 25, with a reasonably decent job going in to see a financial planner? Or would you expect that would be someone in their 40s or 50s before they come in and see a financial planner?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that we would love to see people just starting out investing, because we can see them out all the way through their retirement, hopefully, if we're going to be around long enough, and I hope to be that. But the reality is that we do tend to see more people in their 40s, 50s, all the way up until their 80s, because generally speaking, if we think about investing, there's really two halves to investing. There's building up your assets over time, sort of climbing the mountain, and then spending those assets that you've worked hard to build up so that you can live comfortably when you're not working in retirement. And the pitfalls generally happen on the way down the mountain, not on the way up. So that's where we really add so much value to the relationship, is helping to make sure people don't fall off a cliff, so to speak, if we're using the analogy of coming down the retirement mountain. And so therefore, because people's need for help is around that age, 40 and above, that's where you end up seeing a lot of clients. but we love to see clients in their 20s and 30s who are walking up or climbing up the mountain, saving in their 401ks. We can help them diversify within the plans in the 401ks, help them understand the difference of how to save for retirement versus IRAs versus Roths, benefits of both, cons of both, things like that. So, the sooner you start, the better. And if we can be there to help people do that, we'd love to be able to.
Okay, what about planning for children's education, for instance? Do you see that a lot?
Certainly.
Okay.
Especially with clients in their 40s and 50s, their kids are getting closer and closer to college.
Right.
And they're talking about misconceptions. There are a lot of misconceptions around college planning. And one of those misconceptions is that, if I save money for my kid, it's going to work against my child for federal financial aid, student loans.
Yeah, right.
And there is a shred of truth to that, but the reality is, if you set it up properly, it should have very little impact on the ability of your child to get financial aid. The reality is, the biggest impact is not what you save, it's how much you make in the year that you apply for financial aid. If you make a lot of money in the years that you apply for financial aid, chances of you getting that financial aid are lower. Whether you have a whole bunch of assets set aside in one way or another does impact the plan, but a mere fraction of how much they take into consideration of what the parents make as income. And certainly there are strategies when it comes to the saving part, 529 versus Coverdell accounts, money in parents' name versus money in kids' names versus money in grandparents' names. They all have different pros and cons, so it's important to understand how they all work. But we always advocate that people try to put money away for college because it ain't cheap and it's not getting cheaper. and I tell people,
anytime soon anyway.
No, and I struggle with this myself. I got 2 young kids and they're going to be off to college at some point. I'm thinking to myself, I'll be lucky if I can pay for all of college for both of them. So all I'm going to do is just to try to make it so that their burden coming out of college financially is as little as possible. So I'm going to save as much as I can while personally we're prioritizing my own retirement. And the other thing is that, as much as I love my kids and I don't want them saddled with the debt that I went through going to college, I'm going to prioritize my own retirement first, because simply for the fact that I don't want to rely upon them for funding my retirement.
Correct.
So that's the way I think about it.
That's a good point. Now, the flip side of coming in early is the person that comes in and they're in their 60s and they say, I think this is too late for me, but what can you do for me?
Yeah, it's never too late, first of all, by any stretch. Because, like I said, if you're in your 50s and 60s, you're starting to think about retirement. You're starting to ask yourself the question, do I have enough money to retire? Is it going to last throughout my retirement? How comfortable am I going to be? And so
there are some ads out there right now scaring the heck out of everyone.
Oh, sure.
Are you going to make it through your retirement? Is your money going to last long enough? I mean, it's an excellent question.
Absolutely, and I think about that myself. I would imagine that anybody getting close to retirement is going to have those questions, and they're going to want to see whether on their own or with an advisor like myself, are they going to make it? And so that's part of what we do. In fact, that's the primary focus that I have in my practice is a retirement planning specialist, where the goal is to make sure people understand whether they're on track or not. And how I do that is, the investments are important. And it's important to make sure that they're well invested and diversified, but really the investments are just tools that we all use to help make sure that we're going to get to our long-term goals. And for most of us, the big goal is making sure we can retire comfortably. So those investments have to be invested properly, but how do we make sure that the picture is as fruitful as possible? So what I do is I take a look at people's cash flow. What are you spending on a monthly basis and a yearly basis? And what your net worth is, where are your assets? What are your debts? What do they look like? And then how do those two things translate to your picture of retirement health? And if you're 40 years old, that picture of retirement health might be a little fuzzy because you're a little ways away from retirement. But I call it like this picture of retirement health in my analogy is more like one of those old-fashioned Polaroid camera pictures. You first take it, you're waiting for the picture to come in, you kind of shake it a little bit. Over time, it comes into focus. And that's what we do is get together with our clients at least once a year just to review that picture of retirement health. And as you get closer and closer to your retirement goal, that picture should become crystal clear.
I think you just lost everyone that's 20 years old.
Yeah, I know.
Polaroid, forget about it.
Yeah.
Long gone. Anyway, how about, I opened up the show by saying that we probably should have had this show in the very beginning of all of the estate planning shows that we did recently. But do you recommend to clients that they see a lawyer and what they should have in terms of estate planning documents based upon what you know from a financial point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know enough to be dangerous in that area. And of course, I'm not an expert, like you are in that field. But we know enough to ask the right questions and to guide them to professionals like yourself. So one of the things that I look for right away in starting a new relationship with somebody is, do you have a will? Well, first of all, even before that, do you have an attorney that you would call your own? Do you have a will? When was the last time it was updated? Not everybody may need one, but just in case, I need to know about it. Do you have a trust? And if so, what type of trust? And along with the will, I explained, we don't do any of these things here. We don't do wills, durable power of attorneys, anything like that. But it's important that you have them because they of course, direct a lot of your wishes if you're not around.
Right.
And of course, the healthcare proxy and the durable power of attorneys are very, very important. If people have wills, we note it. If people have durable powers of attorney, we have to have a document on file for that so that we can take direction from that other person should anything happen to that person. So it's very important. And when it comes to estate planning, our end of it is if somebody does have a trust, let's say, for various reasons, there's all sorts of good reasons to have different types of trusts, whether they're revocable, irrevocable, what have you. A lot of times people will think that they've signed the document on the trust and they'll say, okay, good, I'm all set. But in reality, they need to fund that trust, as you well know. So part of that funding of the trust could be re-registering the asset of the house into the name of the trust, as an example.
Right.
Or any assets that you want to avoid probate, which is a very nice thing to be able to do if you can. The trust avoids probate, which is fantastic.
Right.
And so any assets like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, annuities, what have you, if you want those assets to avoid probate and you already have a trust, you basically set up an account at a place like Edward Jones in the name of the trust and put the assets there. It doesn't mean we're even reinvesting anything or anything like that. As long as they're in the name of the trust, they're protected. And they're, whatever the rules are that they set up with their lawyer or you, that's what's going to happen upon their passing. But it avoids probate. Once I get the death certificate in hand, I literally call up the beneficiaries and say, what would you like me to do?
What about taxes? Do you get involved with, not doing taxes, but advising what investments that you're making have, what effect it has on taxes and estates and so on and so forth? Do you get involved with any of that so that
we certainly
people have an understanding of that?
Yeah, and it's a lot of questions stem from tax issues, of course.
Right.
And we certainly deal with them a lot. I'm very knowledgeable about taxes, but again, I'm not a professional CPA, so we always defer that out to the client's CPA or recommend one if they need one. But it is very important because a lot of what I do can directly impact their tax situation.
Sure.
So recommendations of mine are going to have or may have a tax implication for them, either a tax loss as a benefit or a tax gain as a taxable obligation. And so it's important that I and the client's CPA or tax preparer have a good relationship where possible, so that we can make sure that we're, working together as best as possible to create a very smooth tax situation. And so that's very important for me, is to have a working relationship with both the attorney and the CPA of my client, so that we're all on the same page, because we all kind of impact each other a little bit, and it's best if we're all working together. Yeah, but taxes are an important issue.
When someone comes in to seek your services, do you help them go through the process of doing a net worth evaluation so that they kind of know what it is they actually do own? Because a lot of people don't. And so their first opportunity might be in front of someone like you, right?
Yeah, that's actually part of what they get when they're a client of us. And we need to know as an advisor what their cash flow and net worth is, so that we can do a better job of advising. If we don't know that, it's pretty difficult, if you ask me. And so I also realize that not a lot of clients know exactly what their net worth is. And let's face it, a lot of people have accounts here and there and everywhere. They've, on average, people change jobs every 7 years or so. So, it's very likely that they've got accounts all over the place, and it becomes cumbersome and hard to manage, and it can be more expensive to manage things that way with little fees here and there. So by working with somebody like myself to take a look at the whole picture, they can truly understand how all their assets work together in terms of diversification and quality of assets, but also what their net worth truly looks like, so that we can use that number to help us figure out, are they on track for their long-term goals like retirement. So that's part of the process that we go through, that I go through with my clients, to make sure that they're on track. It's very
Right.
important for me to know that.
Yeah, whenever you move a job, and especially if you have a 401k, you ought to be thinking about a financial advisor, or in some way, not just leaving it
Yeah.
where it is. It might be okay to do that, but as you say, if you've had 2 or 3 or 4 jobs and you had 401ks in each one of them, and they're at those companies,
Right. Right.
can be hectic trying to figure out what.
It can be, and you know, Fidelity's got a great line. You know, if you're not at your last job, why would you keep your money there? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you know, there are lots of reasons to certainly roll over your old 401ks into IRAs where you can manage them better with the help of somebody like me, if you so choose to. But I have seen problems where, you know, there are lots of different places people can work, and those employers, it's up to them to maintain the 401k plan.
Right.
And
right.
sometimes they don't do a very good job of it. And sometimes they don't want to be doing it anymore, so they stop their plan or they change their plan, and things can happen, and you're not really involved in any of that. You just find out about it after the fact.
After the fact, yeah.
And so when you're out of that plan because you no longer work there, and you roll it over into your own IRA account, which is a non-taxable event, which is great, you really control it. You know, you control how you're investing,
Right.
and when you're investing, when you're taking money out. You control everything yourself. And if you want help, I'm there to help you. But it's a little bit different of a scenario if you're in the old 401k plan. You're completely at the mercy of whatever their plan is at the time. They do change. Businesses go out of business. You know, some plan might have a loan, and then they might change the loan provisions. All sorts of things can happen. So I like to focus on what I can control and to bring as much stuff into my personal control if I
Right.
can as a client myself. So I would imagine clients would want to do that themselves too.
Okay. Well, this has been real experience, even though you and I have met a number of times.
Absolutely, yeah.
And had a lot of discussions. I want to thank you for coming on, and I'm sure that if anyone out there is looking for a financial planner, especially if they're in this area,
Yeah.
they ought to be giving you a call.
Happy to do so, and happy to come on the show. I really appreciate it.
And we're looking forward to your next show with Rotary as well.
Yeah, look forward to it.
Okay. And as I mentioned to you, this is the program is brought to you by the Northern Middlesex Bar Association, and anything you have observed and heard on this show is for informational purposes only. And we'll see you again next time.